Hello, I am Trifina Wilson, and I'm a business and emotional intelligence strategist. And welcome to the Get It Leadership Podcast. If you are an entrepreneur, startup, or business owner, then the Get It Leadership Podcast is just for you. Every week, I will be discussing tips you can use to improve your emotional intelligence leadership, well-being, and business. I will show you how to achieve success by using the tools you already have. So back by popular demand, we have MacDonald again. Hi, Mac.
Hi, Trifina. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And thank you for inviting me back. It's delightful.
Of course. Everyone loved your first interview, so we kind of wanted you back again, this time to kind of talk about organizational culture. And for those that didn't listen the last time, Mac has his own training company called LAPD, where he's training managers to have empathy and emotional intelligence. So I thought you'd be amazing to have on, again, to discuss about organizational culture.
Sounds good. I should add, of course, that the LAPD is not the American sort of Los Angeles Police Department, but learning and
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Didn't want people getting confused about that, yeah. But no, the training provider, thank you. So, with your 22 years of experience, kind of what has been a good example of organizational culture for you?
I think it's where I often talk about organizational culture being a jigsaw. And there's any jigsaw, there's pieces that fit with other pieces or they don't, etc. But as strange as it may sound, once a jigsaw's completed and it's correct, it's kind of hard to pull apart because all the parts are interlocked and they stop each other from pulling apart. So for me, it's when all those things are working in unison to get the organization doing the right thing in the right way. And generally, I'll know how well an organizational culture is, as in health-wise, because it's working correctly. People are not just doing their jobs and enjoying their jobs, they're enjoying being there, they're enjoying in that environment, because it's very much an environment thing.
It's very much so, and it's about having shared beliefs and values, and about leaders actually communicating that down to the rest of the organization and making sure that that is emphasized as well. So what are kind of your key indicators if anyone is working in a toxic culture? How will they know that they are in a toxic culture?
It's generally because there's a lot of discontent around the place. And also the problem being that, if you and I worked in a very large organization, it might be that your appreciation of the culture is great because in your team, you've got a fantastic manager, great leader, etc. And in mine, it might be completely opposite. And I feel it very toxic because we're always infighting and the manager's fighting with the leader and it just doesn't get on. But yeah, generally speaking, there's a lot of discontent and it's what I call the water cooler talk. Those sort of ad hoc conversations are usually about things that are not going right, or so-and-so said this. Can you believe he said that or she said this? So it's generally that environment where you pick up on a lot of negative vibes. And as a consultant, what quite often happens is people feel they can say a bit more in front of me because I'm not part of the organization. So I'll hear those sort of anecdotes, stories, etc., of things that are not going right. And then we sort of dive down rabbit holes sometimes to go, why? Because quite often people try and fix what's actually happening instead of the root cause. But yeah, it's those little signs, those little red flags, as I say, come up and show us it's not working.
And I think that's where you're really good as a person that can step in, that's unbiased, that can actually give that kind of sounding board. Because I think people feel more comfortable to open up to you than having someone that's kind of internal and kind of living in that fear that they're going to get reprimanded by being honest. So kind of what are your top 3 causes of conflict within organizations?
Yeah, it's very much the case. Well, if we imagine if you had a really good culture and you and I both work in that place and we feel we can say anything we like. Well, we can only do that because we feel safe in there. There's a certain amount of security the organization has given us to say, you can say what you want. In fact, we want you to speak. And they live to that, like you said a minute ago, actually it comes from the people at the top and it works its way down, and they evidence those sorts of values and behaviours. And once we feel like that, it's great. But the problem is, if it's not working like that, that's when you get the character clashes, and you'll get some strong people within a team perhaps challenging managers, and the managers feel very defensive. They then go to talk to their leader, as in sort of more senior manager or leader, and that then sort of cascades into more problems, and it's just, look, go and fix it, go and fix it. So there isn't usually a really good way of making it work properly. And then, of course, we get personality clashes. Now, not everybody in the world is going to get on, that's a fact. Even in a really good organisation where people feel good, we are not going to get on. And in fact, if you look at some of the top reasons for people falling out at work, it isn't anything to do with the two people themselves. It's because you and I, for example, disagreed on something. And you turned around and said X, I think we should do it this way. And I said, well, actually, I think we should do it that way. And then what happened was that the person who was going to make the decision, they decided in your favour. And I thought, oh, right, okay, well, I don't like you because of that. Which, of course, is ridiculous. It's sort of, school children playground stuff. But those things happen. It's about how we behave towards each other and that emotional intelligence. If I can step back on that a minute and think, do you know what? I know what Trifina said wasn't my thing, but I can see where she's coming from. It's been decided, let's go with that and let's be positive and move forward. Whereas very often that doesn't happen, but in a good culture, that's what happens, is we try and pick up and move on and move forward. And I think the other thing that sort of is a real sign is when you get somebody new into the organisation, and unconsciously what happens is they get educated about the toxic environment. And quite often it's from the person who feels less or least happy in that team or in that particular silo of the organisation, and they'll be the first there going, oh, you be careful when you talk to MacDonald, he's really this, he's that. Don't say anything about this because you'll go mad. And the person starts getting educated.
How many times has that happened? Where you go to an organisation and there's someone that's warning you about certain people. Doesn't that already subconsciously put that negative energy already in your mind about that person?
Yeah.
So it's such a powerful thing, but also very negative as well, because already you're on the back foot because you've been pre-warned about this person. And that's happened so many times.
Yeah. And if the person who's warning, so if I'm warning you, watch out for, Georgina, etc. over there, it could be that I've got a personality clash with this person and there's nothing wrong with them at all. But you go in with a bias thinking, oh, I better be very, very careful. So it's just so difficult.
It is. It's really difficult. But I think, like you said, it's really important to have that emotional intelligence to go, I'm not going to agree with everybody. Let me just take a step back and maybe come to some kind of agreement. But more than too often, a lot of people get quite upset and for years probably have a begrudge against somebody because it hasn't been properly communicated the differences of opinion. So I think the communication and emotional intelligence is so important to kind of be throughout organizations, to have that as a kind of natural behavior to kind of get over any causes of conflict, and having someone as a third party to come in and get involved if it does have to escalate as well. Have you had personal experience of that yourself?
Yeah, actually, as you were just saying something there was one that entered my head where there was a particular woman in an organisation who was talked about and, in fact, nicknamed the Dragon because she was really quite sort of fire-breathing, etc. And what a reputation this woman had. And as it turned out, about 18 months later, I was asked to go in and do some coaching with this lady. And it was fascinating because, again, we got to the root cause. And as it really turned out, she had, although she was quite a senior manager, her leader in charge of her part of the organisation was the person that drove and drove and drove and wanted figures and wanted them yesterday and wanted better figures than the target said. And she was under such huge pressure from this person that she then passed on that behaviour to her team and wider teams and team managers, saying, I need this, I need this. So arguably, if my thinking was, if we can fix her relationship with that woman and her boss and get things into a better perspective where it's more reality, instead of him just saying, look, I need these because I want to look good and I want to put the reports in, try and make him understand where it is that she is, that sort of moccasin approach of looking at it from her position. What is it like to sit in her chair and get all this sort of stress? And we managed to get a couple of, after I did about 4 or 5 meetings with the woman, I then very kindly, with her permission, managed to get this guy to come in, and we sat and chatted. And it only took 2 sessions, and we were fixed, and things worked out so much better. And what was interesting was that previous to that, she wasn't going to any social occasions within the organisation because she felt so much under pressure, she just wanted to go and lie in a dark room at home sort of thing, but also believed that nobody would want her there because she knew what a reputation she had. And the result of this relationship being improved, she started going to social events and in fact started enjoying work, and everybody started enjoying working for her. And the transformation was because one small thing, I say small, obviously for her, it was a big thing, but that one fix created so much more positivity, better environment for everybody that worked in that triangle.
And yeah, it's so interesting how that one little, you had 2 sessions, it was just 2 sessions and that was resolved. How easy that can be resolved if people do have the knowledge and skills to be able to have that heightened emotional intelligence to kind of sort it out earlier on. So why do you feel that it's such a priority for organisational leaders to make sure that there is good organisational culture? I mean, that was a perfect example of why, but why is another reason for you as well that it should be a priority for them to make sure they have a good organisational culture?
I think, if I was trying to sell this and to say, look, here's why you should have a great organisational culture, I've got to look at it from their position. What does any leader, what does the CEO and the senior leadership team want, the board, etc.? They want success. Now, I've been in organisations where people have turned around to me and said, yeah, I know we push them hard, I know we crack the whip, I know there's a lot of stress at work, but we get the results. And I immediately say to them, all right, just imagine this. Imagine that you had less pressure, the people under you and that worked for you and across the organisation didn't feel half as much pressure. They started enjoying their work. What do you think is going to happen to those results and those targets and those KPIs? They're going to get better and better, and your customer complaints and dissatisfaction is going to drop. So from a purely logical point of view, the way my brain is, the happier the working place is and the happier the people are doing their job in that environment, the more productive they're going to be. And I always say that if you care for your people will care for you. And they'll do it by working well. And again, it goes back to that security. Have I got the ability to say what I want? This woman that I just mentioned felt she could not say anything to this person. But what was interesting, your point was well made. It took 2 little sessions to get that sorted. The reason for that was he had no idea he made her feel like that. Only when it came to his consciousness that's what the impact was. He was absolutely horrified. He didn't know that's how he portrayed, himself to her. Mm. So that's why it's so easy to fix.
Yeah. And for me also as well, a lot of people probably don't even know what they're doing or how they're making another person feel. That's why it's really important to communicate if you are feeling that you aren't happy, because some people just can't pick up on the cues or not, don't have self-awareness. But by communicating and saying, I'm not really happy with this, or I'm overstressed, I'm overworked, can you help me out, or can something else be done? It's really important. I'm so big on communication, because like you said, just something so little as just turning into something so big where she wasn't attending any work functions or doing anything because she was so stressed. But having them conversations can really make such a big, huge difference as well.
Indeed, yeah.
So why do you feel that it's important for teams to kind of collaborate with each other in different departments within organizations? Because more than too often you have teams that are just with the teams, they know everybody in the team and that's it, they don't really venture out. And you see it when you go to the office parties or when you go to Christmas parties and you see the same team standing huddled together just talking to the same people. That's what I really feel like it's very important to collaborate within the organization. But what's your take on it from your experience?
Yeah, it's a cracking question, and it's just so important in an organisation. I often talk about an approach which I call the team of teams. Mm-hmm. So if you imagine an organisation that's got X amount of teams in it right across the whole thing, whether it be international or otherwise, those teams should almost be like a family. They should be trying to work together and helping each other. But as you rightly point out, very often it's very much a us and them type environment, which is not, something that's too hard to understand, because the team manager is trying to get their KPIs, trying to get their targets done. Therefore, they are focusing on that team. But for me, the success has to be pushed in and managed by the more senior managers and leaders by getting into those places and talking to people and saying, well, what are the problems? I had a classic example where there were two people in a workshop with me, and one mentioned something from that team, and the other person sat right beside her. She mentioned something from her perspective on that team. And they almost started this row, and I said, right, hold on. What's wrong? And she said, well, we put something through, and we put it as a 7 priority out of 10. It's really urgent. And then they get it, and they lower it because they say it's not that urgent. And I said, right. And this lady immediately turned around and said, whoa, hold on. The reason we do that is because it's not that important. And they said, well, it is important because of this. Anyway, what was happening was they weren't justifying why they gave the score. So that was it. And as soon as this person found out why that 7 was actually meaning to be a 7, they went, oh, well, you didn't say that. I agree. Yeah, absolutely fine. So this thing about having teams not working together, I often say creates either a conscious or an unconscious saboteur. And I'm not saying they're going to sort of burn the building down or anything drastic like that. What they do is they actively don't give information, or don't give that information as quickly as they could, or they don't try and help where they think they possibly could, because they almost want to trip others up because they're causing them a problem. It's a human inbuilt thing. It's like if you look at two kids, they'll squabble, and the next time one of them will say something, they'll receive it wrongly because they want to get back at the other child. It's not that different. You know, as humans, I just say we're big children. And sadly, we do behave like that sometimes. So, but going back to your point was so well made, it's that self-awareness. How do we become self-aware? Well, we ask people, how's my behavior to you? And you know, in a really good culture, you can do that. And if I think as my manager, you're making me change my behavior, I can actually go to you one day and say, look, I just want to point out yesterday, I know you're really stressed, but that's how it made me feel. And that's great for you and me because we can sit down and get that sorted. Whereas if we don't do that and I feel I can't do it, you'll keep doing it.
And then it harbors resentment and bad feeling. And then that's when your well-being comes into play, and then you start suffering, So, like you said, communication is such a big key point of it. So what are kind of some of the activities do you think that organizations can do to encourage team building? And I don't mean going to kind of the escape rooms. You're not going to say that, because I mean, some people enjoy them, but I always see these escape room team building activities. But what do you feel is good activities for organizations to implement for team building?
Do tell me if I'm not answering the right way, okay? But there's one thing that we implemented a couple of years ago with an organization which just worked so well. And it wasn't about just that team and how well it worked. It was also about that team and how they worked together. And one of the things we got them to do was a share. And that's all they called it, was they'd have a share. So, for example, some people from your team would come and work with my guys for an hour, 2 hours of a morning or an afternoon, whatever it might be, purely to get a feeling of what it's like to sit in my seat and the issues we have coming maybe from another team or from customers that these guys don't see. And that was just hugely powerful. So what it did was, within the team, say if you were coming to visit me, it made me feel that you did care and you wanted to know about it. And there was a good reason behind that. From your perspective, coming to my team and learning about my issues, it made you far more self-aware aware of my side of things and how it was for me to sit in that chair, etc. And it just meant that both teams got clarity and they worked together far more effectively.
So some of the organizations that I've consulted on, I have that right at the beginning when you have new starts as part of onboarding. I think it's really important for you to work in other departments, walk in someone else's shoes and see what's going on. Because further down the line, I think it's a bit too late, because already, like you said, when someone's saying this is a 7 and it's urgent and the other team's actually saying no. But if that team had done the onboarding part of being in the other team and seeing how they rated what a 7 was, then they will take a step and go, actually, maybe it is a 5 right now, because we know how we've seen them previously when we joined the organization. But that, I think that should be, I think that's a great team building activity, because I've witnessed how powerful that is, because I think people have more of an understanding. When I'm saying something is urgent, is it really urgent? Because I know Mac is actually probably going to give this a 6 instead of an 8 is urgent. But yeah, that's a really, really good one, which I've witnessed has really positive effects as well.
And I tell you, I think to keep it going, to keep that collaboration, we introduced BPMs, a best practice manager. So you might be someone in the team who isn't a manager or a team leader, but you've been there for a while, you know how things work, you know a lot about how things are. And I and the other team, again, I'm not a manager or anything, so this word manager is literally a person who manages, not a position. But every week or every month, whatever it's deemed to be best, you and I meet up about the issues we've got on our other teams. And we see how we can help each other, perhaps, with those issues. We're not saying we can, wave a magic wand. But just that constant communication is great, because your team will come to you and say, look, when you go and speak to Matt next time about that, can you raise this and see if they can do anything about this? And again, it's like just what you said, it's that communication. It's keeping people informed of how it is from this chair when you're sat in another chair.
Yeah. And as we've gone through a major kind of shake-up in the way we work, in the way we communicate with each other, what can organizations do to promote a balance, work-life with all the employees, with all the, the people that they're working with in organizations? What do you think is a good way to promote a good work-life balance?
I think it's got to be a case of being considerate. When we talk about emotional intelligence, which is, I'm sort of obsessed with, that social awareness aspect is where in my team, I know everybody quite well. And if I don't, I need to get them to know them as well as possible. Now, when it comes down to this sort of new normal we're moving into, there's a lot of talk about, well, what about working remote? How does that sort of work? How does it affect? How do I still keep my team together? Actually, there's no real difference. It's actually more important now to make that human connection. One of the things I loved was, as this was rolling out, this whole lockdown thing, we suddenly saw far more care, empathy, sympathy, with people, and that better connection. And as you're saying, well, what do we do to make these things better? It's keep it going. We talk about that sort of rope thing where you have the remote and office connection, and it just helps people keep in touch with people in the office, because there's the subtleties that happen in the office that a person working remotely won't get involved to. Yeah, they're on the team briefs and those discussions maybe morning and evening. They don't get the chit-chat, which I know that some bosses might go, well done, that's chit-chat. Actually, it's a very important part of a good organizational culture, is that somebody can take 60 seconds, 2 minutes to mention a movie they saw the night before or something, because it keeps us in that sort of well-being side. So it is, to me, very much understand those people who have got particular needs. Has somebody got children and not got children? Have they got someone who has got more difficulty needs, special care? All that aspect as well. And I'd even say, as far as go to say, watch out for the quiet ones, because just because they're not making any noise at all doesn't mean they're okay. And when you say to them, how are you today? And they go, I'm fine, thank you. Don't necessarily take it at face value. Have those good off-piece chats, nothing to do with work, just 10 minutes chatting, and you'll find other things. And we talk about the RAG system, the red, amber, green, but instead of saying to someone, how are you today? You say to them, so where are you in the color chart? Are you an absolute green? Are you sort of on the bottom part of the green? Are you getting a bit amber around the gills, or what's going on? And it just makes it an easier way for me to tell you where I am without saying why. It's a better way of introducing it.
Mm. It's almost like the how are you has become almost the same as hello, because no one really answers it in a way that, actually, I'm not feeling too good today, or being honest, just like, yeah, I'm okay, and kind of carry on. That's why it's good to kind of ask leading open questions, because you really want to show that you care about that person and that you are genuinely asking, how are you today? Sometimes when I ask someone how are they, and they go, yeah, I'm fine, I'm like, no, but how are you? What's been going on with you? How's the family? How's everything? How's work? And they sometimes they're a bit taken aback, because you're actually genuinely showing true concern. It's not just a how are you, hello kind of question.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So with everything that you've been doing, I know that you said to me that you might have a article that might be released soon. Do you want to tell everybody when that might be?
That's such a dangerous question to ask me, because I am that person that goes through the article, and eventually I probably get round to the exact way it was 10 days ago.
Yeah, because I want everyone to be able to be aware when it is, and they can go and read it.
Yeah. I'm actually, the one I was meant to release last week is actually going out tomorrow, so that at least is finished. And I am writing one at the moment about organisational culture and some thoughts on it. And especially as we're moving into what's described as this new normal, I don't think we have to do anything particularly different in the way we do things in that regard. But how we do them, I think we need to be very, very much more personal. And as you said a minute ago, truly care about the question you're asking. Instead of going, are you okay today? You're a good, tick, done that, next person, tick, etc. There has to be a lot more connection. And the only way you'll do that is if you truly know each of your people at a quite a personal level. Article, the organisational culture will probably be released next week, fingers crossed.
Okay, it will be. I can imagine it will be happening. So, do you actually have a good example of what good organisational culture is, or what it should look like?
Do you know what just hit me straight in the head at the moment as soon as you said that was, I was chatting to a guy a couple of weeks ago, and he was trying to sell me something, but I was interested in buying what he had. And as we got chatting, he became interested in the emotional intelligence aspect. Anyway, I sent him this document. I said, have a read through that. What was really interesting for me is he came back and he said, you know what, that actually is roughly how we work at the moment. So they very kindly allowed me now to go in and meet them and chat to some of their guys, senior managers, the CEO, and find out how did they manage that, because they've done it. As he says, well, we kind of ended up there by accident. But when I asked him what it was like to work there, he said, it's absolutely great. And I'll give you an example. This guy is not some sort of senior manager type salesperson, but on my request of what I wanted, he said, I'll go and speak to the CEO. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. He said, yeah, well, he's great. We just walk in and have a chat. So there is an example of where the culture is, yeah, actually, I want you to come. I'm not just saying my door's always open. It is always open. So come in and see me. And he says, I've got this. This guy runs a charitable organisation. I think we should do this, etc. And off it goes. And I said, that's great. And so how many other people do that? And he went, anybody. He said, we've all got this thing where we can say whatever we like. And if someone doesn't like it, they've got to prove why it's wrong. You know, it's that huge ability to say what you want and know that you're safe. You know, we call it the ES2. We've got the emotional security from the company and the emotional safety that the people feel, in that they know that whenever they say something respectfully and politely, professionally, it's going to be listened to. You know, that for me is the perfect culture, and everybody wants to be there. You know, attrition rates, people leaving, etc., happens, but it's not because they're dissatisfied with a manager, which I believe is the biggest reason that people leave.
And that is a perfect example of a good organisational culture. Thank you, Mac. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I could actually talk to you for hours and hours.
Likewise, don't let me start.
So if anyone wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way they can do that?
They can just Google LAPD Solutions and we'll come up, or the Los Angeles Police Department, whichever. But yeah, LAPD Solutions is
the best one. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to speaking to you again.
A pleasure. Thanks very much for having me on.
Okay, bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
If you like this video, please give a thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe now for new videos. Please let me know in the comment section below if you found these tips useful. And if you would like more professional one-to-one coaching, please feel free to contact me at egetisleadership.com. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.